I have two caveats here before we start this episode, really get into it. One is I hope I don't piss off too many people and make everybody mad in our industry with things that I say today.
Hello and welcome to the It Depends podcast, your alternative guide to the often mystifying world of psychometrics. In each episode, your hosts, myself, Tim Burnett, and the brilliant Dr. Amanda Danis will serve you a cocktail of psychometric wisdom garnished with a twist of sarcasm and humour. Our mission, to help you actually enjoy the process of building better tests. So grab your favourite beverage and get ready to dive into the awesome world of psychometrics. Hello and welcome to another episode of It Depends, the podcast for wannabe psychometricians who want to navigate the world of the very complex world of psychometrics, but don't necessarily want to turn psycho on everyone on that journey. My name's Tim Burnett. I'm joined by the amazing Amanda Danis. Hello, Amanda. Good
morning. How are you? That was a great introduction. Are you implying that I am psycho?
I think you have to be a psycho, don't you?
A little bit. Yeah.
a little psycho with a small p. So as ever, if you want to listen to any of the podcasts or any of the back podcasts, we're on this is episode 8 now. We've also got, I think it's 9 actually, because we've got a special edition one that's in there as well. You go to the testcommunity.network and look for the podcast. It depends on the menu there. I'm proud to say, Amanda, we're now at 730 plays.
Can we have some sort of party when we get to 1,000? Like, how do we can celebrate that? Maybe, yeah.
Well, we talked about having a Christmas edition as well, haven't we? Like a Christmas party version.
We wear ugly Christmas sweaters.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Well, I think that we'll reach 1,000 before then, so we can have 2. We can have 1,000 plays party and then a Christmas episode. Would be great.
Definitely, yeah. Let's do that. You've also got an announcement as well. So, Amanda, you're coming up with office hours with Amanda Danis. Do you want to tell us a bit more about this?
Yeah. So it's not just me. I think I'll have my whole team on. But we have all these webinars in our industry. We have all these conferences. We have so many great resources out there. But I, for one, am not a really good salesperson or marketing person, as you know, Tim, because you cringe when I tell you things that I don't do as a business owner. But I want to offer just like once a month, an hour that you can just call in, or like almost like a radio show. I'm picturing like Frasier, one of my favorite shows, testing industry. I'm listening. And you can just ask any question that you want. And so I just want it to be like an open Teams link. And you don't even you can register if you want so that you can have like the calendar invite, but you don't have to, because we're not going to bug you afterwards. You're not going to be on some list. I always, if I sign up for something, then I'm like, God, I now have to unsubscribe. Like, it's just so annoying. And I'm not going to be that person. So it's literally just going to be a meeting. You can dial in and you can ask questions. You can listen to questions. We'll have some topics that we might talk about as a team in case nobody calls in, and then there'll be a recording later and you can listen later. Like if we have nobody interested, then we'll just chit chat amongst ourselves. We're a funny group. But really any question that you want. And if we can't answer it, we will be able to refer you to a place that can answer it. I just did a webinar for ASAE and we had almost 500 people attend. And it was a great webinar. And the chat function, like the Q&A function on the chat, on the call, was just like going off. I mean, there were so many questions and so many, really interesting and good questions that people had. And I just thought, we just need like an open forum for this, like pretend it's like a conference booth and you can come up and ask us any questions that you want. So we're going to do that. I'll have some more information about it that we can send out on LinkedIn and stuff like that. But yeah, just open for questions, no marketing, no sales, because there's lots of just very good questions out there that are very easy for us to answer because we've been in the industry for a long time. And I think it would help a lot of people. So we're going to give it a shot, like office hours.
Yeah, excellent. So 5th of September, 12 p.m. For 1 hour Eastern time. Mark that in your calendar and follow us for more updates and more information about where you can join that.
And for the record, I've been talking about doing this for a long time. And so for you guys listening to the podcast, Tim just popped that up there. Now I really have to do it. So thanks, Tim.
Yeah, it's in there. It's there. We've set a date.
Now I have to do it. I can't get out of it. I can't procrastinate and put it off any longer. Great.
Yeah, there's no way. And as ever with this podcast, we're going to be talking about the question of testing our budget today. And there's going to be a bonus question which will be available for you to listen to via the Test Community Network. And the question today is going to be, if you need a bigger platform, what tips are there to reduce the price? So a few kind of tips and advice on how you can knock that price down if you do have to pay for some bigger tech as part of your program. As ever, just a final reminder, subscribe and review. We really appreciate reviews that people leave and tell us. It just helps us understand what it is you like about the podcast and what you want to hear more of.
Yes, please.
So first question then today is, are big vendor platforms always the best option for your organization, Amanda, if you're testing on a budget?
No. And I think that I have two caveats here before we start this episode, really get into it. One is, I hope I don't piss off too many people and make everybody mad in our industry with things that I say today. Number one. Number two, I do definitely come from the point of view of a consultant who works a lot with small to medium groups. So we do have a couple really big programs that are doing thousands and thousands of people a year. But for the most part, we do a lot of work with groups who are, doing 50 people a year, a few hundred people a year. They have a single form, maybe hopefully two forms. We always recommend two forms of their test. So just to start off, I'm coming from that point of view. But I see that there's a lot of people out there who run those types of small to medium programs, and they don't think that they can have a really good program, or they can't afford to launch a certification program or a credentialing program because they can't afford the testing platform. And so a lot of what we do is come up with kind of out of the box ways to get a secure testing program out there that is good and, get you valid and reliable scores, but that you can do it on a budget. You don't have to meet a minimum spend of 40 or 50 grand or whatever. So I don't think that the super large platforms are necessary. I think they're awesome. I think I have some favorites and I have some ones that I don't like. We don't have to talk about that, but, I think it's good to shop around and you can learn what those platforms can do, but keep in mind of what you actually need and what you don't need. Do you need to be able to administer adaptively? Are you going to have thousands of items in your item bank that you need to be able to store securely? Do you need to be able to deliver in test centers, or can you just deliver via remote proctoring? A lot of it depends on the stakes of your exam. How high stakes is it? But most of it, I would say the biggest variable is the volume of how many people you're testing per year. That really kind of drives a lot of the decisions that you'll make. And again, that drives also the revenue that you're bringing in. So the two things totally have to do with each other.
Yeah, this is for me, as someone who's kind of obviously worked and marketed for some of the large platforms. I'm kind of a little bit torn on this in some ways, but I do know that from speaking to delegates who go to innovations and people like that, they do get a little bit put off by the size and scale of the options that are out there. They don't want something quite as big, and I think I understand it costs money to run these solutions. I think sometimes the challenge is when they kind of come in with small volumes but want quite complex systems. So. And come in with kind of, well, we want it to do this X, Y, and Z. Well, it doesn't do this. So I don't know. There's maybe a degree of compromise in there. I think the first thing I would do though is make sure you're asking the question when you are speaking to someone. Is there someone of a similar size to me that's using your platform?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can I speak with them?
Yeah. And what's their experience like? Because most salespeople are going to go, oh yeah. Yeah, we could do
that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to say yes all the time, aren't they? Because they want that lead. They want that.
Oh, we can do that.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's an interesting one. But I think, as we go through this, there's a few questions. I suppose, starting off with item banking, is it possible to do item banking on a budget, for instance? Is that, how would you
Well,
approach that?
sure, because item banking, what is item banking, right? It is storing your items somewhere.
Mm.
If you are not doing an adaptive or a loft test and you're just, administering a fixed form and you have, let's say, 100 items on two forms. So let's say you have no overlap, 200 items, you're administering this form and this form alternatively, or however you're doing it. If you're storing 200 items, use a password protected Excel workbook that is stored on your server for your company, on SharePoint or whatever. There's your item banking system. Granted, if you want to be able to sort by, and there's all the metadata that goes with those items, right? But all of that can be stored in Airtable, Aviebase. You like Airtable, I like Aviebase.
Yeah, I love that
I
table.
know.
Yeah.
And Airtable is a little bit, I think, more robust than Aviebase, but I like Aviebase because the name, I think it's funny. And it's $4.99 a month or something. And you can, in a lot of those platforms, you can still sort by subject, you can sort by p-values, you can sort by how they map to the blueprint, you can store all that information in there. So you don't need a complex item banking system until you start to get into that you're going to tag things, that you're going to run a report that pulls out items that are just with these tags, which actually, if you run a macro in Excel, you can probably do that. But so all of it depends, ding, ding, all of it depends on the complexity of your item bank. How many items are we talking about? What kind of media is stored with the items, right? So even in one of the Airtables or Avibases that we're talking about, they will store a media file with that item, whether it's a video file or audio or diagram or image or whatever. So there's lots of other options out there, and then it becomes a little bit clunkier because you have to think about when you change an item, then you have to upload it into the system. So if you're administering through SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics or your LMS and you're storing your items in an Excel sheet or somewhere else, how do you export them and get them into that system? What does that look like? So a lot of times in the non-testing platforms, the item banking isn't really item banking. It's just sort of like you have to push the whole form out together instead of being able to cobble things together. But if you're not doing 16 forms a year and you're not doing loft or adaptive testing, you have the resources to upload an Excel spreadsheet once in a while, you can do it that way. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on a license for it. Yeah, and again, I think I'm not making a lot of friends in our industry by saying these things, but
Well, I think it's not. I think the in some of the size cases, I think it's if you've got to think about the kind of some of the things you can lose out on. So, like you mentioned there about the workflow and the manual aspects and things like that. So,
yeah.
If you are making lots of changes and you're starting to increase your scale and you've got more items, so things like that become unmanageable, and there's the more steps that you have to go through, there's more chance of human error going into that process. Then,
Correct.
there is some benefits to be had. But if you're starting out, if it's a new program, new something, and you want to test the water, it's a bit of a kind of exploratory piece of work. Then, you could use a lot of these things just to get the forms off the ground and set up.
Yeah, and I mean, I've met the people who come from an association. We go to ASAE every year and love it. It's a great conference. And and people come up and they're like, well, we'd love to start a certification program, but we stopped by such and such booth at a different conference and their minimum licensing fee is $52,000 a year. And I'm like, stop talking. No, that's not. And so that's a barrier. And so then they walk away and they think, oh, we just can't afford it. You can there are ways to get around it, especially when you're growing it. A lot of groups don't have just the cash sitting around that they can just invest into something like that before it's giving you revenue. When you're not even really sure what the revenue model is going to look like. So there are ways. I'm not saying that you should have a huge program and manage it in Excel, right? That is not, the testing platforms are awesome and they are designed to do lots of cool things. But if you're just starting out or you're trying to make your small program better and you're trying to make it grow, there are ways to do that before you have to like break your bank.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's probably one of the reasons why they have set the minimum for 50,000 or something, is because to exhibit at that conference is quite an expensive thing. So, so there might be some suppliers out there, and we'll talk about this a bit later on in the bonus question. But yeah, there might just not be. There might be people out there, but this might not be at that particular conference because it's too expensive for them to exhibit at, isn't it? Okay, so what about if you need to secure your tests? Can you do that on a budget if you need secure delivery?
So that's another one that, again, the answer to that question is really, really driven by your volume and your staff resources. So we had a group, they were not accredited, but still wanted to adhere to best practices. And they ended up, they do maybe, I don't know, 20 people a month on their certification. And they ended up administering it through their LMS because they already had an LMS. They already had a contract with them. So it cost them nothing additionally to administer through that. And they would do it over Zoom. And they hired an assistant. I don't know what her official title was, but that's what she did as part of her job, was to proctor those exams. And Chrome has a free lockdown browser. And they did it that way. And again, I am not saying that for a super high stakes exam, you should have, Tiffany over here proctoring the exam and also checking Facebook at the same time. I don't know, but there are ways to do this, that where the benefits outweigh the risks. And we had another group who actually did get accredited. They are still accredited. And they did their knowledge-based test on a computer with a lockdown browser through SurveyMonkey. And it was proctored in person. So they did groups of 20 to 30 guys. They would go into their local training center and take the test in a computer lab. Lockdown browser, used SurveyMonkey, which has a quiz function. It grades it. We would export it and run the data for them and check everything. And they got accredited using SurveyMonkey, and it was awesome. And I think they paid $14.99 a month for that platform. But it worked. I mean, SurveyMonkey has a lot of, I hate the name. I don't know what, I wish I know, it's so bad. I'm like, and the other one is, there's like a Survey Gizmo or something. I'm like, come on, you guys, can you please come up with a better name? Love Qualtrics. Qualtrics is a little bit more expensive. But yeah, it was awesome. And some people shook their heads about it. They couldn't believe that we did that and that we got them accredited, but it was secure. Lockdown browser. SurveyMonkey has a great white paper on their test security. Their security for their system. So it was awesome.
Yeah. I think, So keep it. Again, it's down to the kind of volume. How would you kind of risk assess that? Is there kind of some steps that you would go through to kind of look at that? How secure do we need to go?
Yeah. I think everybody tends to think that their exam is high stakes, right? Because, it is usually for the testing program, the organization, because they have invested money into it and they are marketing it, and they don't, they've spent all this time with their SMEs to develop this really good test. And if the test gets exposed, then they have to redo it all. And so yes, that is one question to ask. If there's exposure for some items, how much is that going to cost us? So one thing that we always do is we write extra items. So when we're developing a test, so that if we find out that an item gets out or a couple items get out or something happens, we have some in our back pocket to be able to just keep the program going. We don't have to redo everything. So that's one thing, right? What is the cost of exposure to the certification body or to the testing program? How much is it going to cost to fix that if it happens? Also the PR of it, if it gets out, right? How much does that damage your reputation? And what is the impact of certifying somebody who shouldn't be certified? Are we talking public safety? Are we talking they sit behind a desk and do stuff, and it's not quite as impactful. I don't want to say it's not important. But yeah, you have to kind of weigh all of those things into how much are we going to spend and worry about test security versus what is the likelihood of something happening, right? Of there being a breach, and what is the impact of that breach? And then I think those three things kind of have to work together so that you can make a good risk assessment and a decision on what you want to do. And I'm sure everybody talks about this all the time, and test security is a huge trend of discussion in our industry. And I think that it is not quite, I almost want to say test security is overrated. It's not overrated. I think I would get kicked out of the industry for saying that. I think it's incredibly important for lots and lots of programs, but I think it depends. I think the level of importance of your test security depends on some of those variables, right? And so it's important not to get talked into, oh my God, we have to spend all this money because test security is so important.
Yeah.
Take a step back. What are the odds that one of your people in your industry, what's the personal benefit to them to stealing some of your content and selling it on the internet? Can they sell it? Would they make money off it? Is anybody interested in it? What happens if 2 of your questions get out? Just take a step back and kind of do a high level risk assessment there.
Yeah, it's one of those things that has become a bit of an arms race, particularly with GBT and things like that coming in now, are they? And I always compare these kind of things like insurance. When you're hiring a car, you go and pick up a car. And this happened to me when we went to
renting a car.
Yeah, renting a car, hiring a car. You say potato, I say potato. No, that's the other way around. Well, we went to Iceland, and they're going through the insurance options. Do you want windscreen protection? Yeah, okay. Yeah, that sounds reasonable. You're going to cost me a lot. Do you want sandstorm protection? And then you kind of go, do I need sandstorm? Wow,
Right.
I didn't know any. And
Do I need
I think
lava protection? Yes.
yeah. And when those kind of risks are put out there, you think, oh my God, we need to kind of we need to look at that. But it is absolutely about looking at your program. What are the risks associated and the scale of it as well? If you're Zoom proctoring 100 people a month or something, then does that warrant the scale of going down another solution? Big platform
because you're
providers.
also paying for that person's time, so that it's still costing you to do that.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of those considerations, and I just again, coming from somebody who works with a lot of groups that come to us and say, we watched this webinar, or we went to this conference, or whatever. Somehow we heard about this group, and this was the minimum, and we just can't afford that. So we haven't built a certification program, but our industry really needs one. And I'm like, okay, well, here's how we're going to do that. We're going to start here. And we've watched people grow, and the revenue grows. And then they get to the point where the volume is kind of at that bubble, and they have to kind of graduate to get that bigger system. And then it works very well for them. But there's a lot of groups where the industry is small enough that they may never really get to that point. And so I hate to see where they either do a really crappy job of a test because they think that to do a good one, that they can't afford to do a good one. And so there's lots of different ways to get around that. Yeah.
What about then test data analysis? Can you do that on a budget?
So the test analysis piece, and granted, I completely, in all transparency, see that this is saying you need us, but you don't need them. So I don't need to say that. The test analysis piece actually can save you money, because if you are checking your data and you are running your item analysis, you're looking to see if drift has changed, right? Like if items are now, everybody's getting them correct, which indicates that they've been exposed, or your passing rates are jumping, or at this one place that's being proctored in person, you have this one person who's, let's say you're doing a training and the trainer is the proctor, which there's so many things wrong with that. That's a whole other podcast. But all of those people are passing. Like, you want to be able to look at your statistics and know how the test is behaving, how the items are doing. And it can save you money, because if it's doing really, really well, then maybe you can put off, having to develop another form for a little while. Or if it's doing really well and it's matching with the JTA that's there, you can put off the JTA for another year. So it could actually save you some money. But I do think doing those kind of operational validity checks are important. And you can do ones that are down and dirty, where you're just really checking, you don't have to do a full report. So we do them both ways. We'll do a down and dirty way. Like, yeah, things look good. Here's a couple items that we flagged. Have your SMEs review them. Super easy. Or we have to do a more formal process, because you need a report to either give to your stakeholders, your board, or for your accreditors or your assessors, right? Which is a big report of, there's pretty graphs and lots of cool things in there. But you've got to take a look. We have people that come to us and they say, well, we've had this test and it's really good and it's valid and reliable, because they don't understand what that means. And we've had the same format for 10 years and we've never once looked at it. But for some reason, everybody's passing the exam now. And I'm like, let's take a look at that.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. So I think that check part is really, really important. But it shouldn't really break the bank either. And one thing, sort of a little bit off topic, but not quite, back to vendor shopping, is remember to ask, if you do have your data in a platform, how much does it cost, or can you access your data easily? Right.
Yeah.
So not only do you need to pay somebody to analyze the data, unless you have a stats person on board, which is great. If you need to pay to pull your data out, that's a problem. It's your data. You should be able to run it and pull it and get it out of your system. So that's kind of a hidden cost that can happen. And it would make you not do your item analysis, because you don't want to spend the $4,000 to get your data out. And then it's a slippery slope from there, right? I think I talked about that on the vendor shopping one.
You did. It's an important one. I think it's one of those conversations out, and a lot of it depends on how what kind of relationship you want, or what kind of supplier you want. If you just want to pass everything over to one particular company and say, look, just do the whole thing for me, and they'll do a good job.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if you try and change that model, if you want to start seeing your own data because you want to keep costs down or something like that, then that's where it's going to start to unfold a little bit.
Those bigger platforms, they will have in-house psychometricians who will be your psychometrician. They might switch them sometimes, but we've heard about that as well. But I also have groups that use the bigger platforms and they love them, and they have an in-house psychometrician that will run those reports for them. If you need it to be all done for you, those big systems are great for that. There are some smaller systems out there, and I say smaller just because they're still robust, but they're just a little bit, maybe they don't have a ginormous testing center network, although a lot of them partner now with a lot of the test center networks. So it's a good question to ask. Don't assume that a smaller software as a service platform doesn't have a test center network, because they're integrating and they're partnering a lot, like all over the place. So it's another good question to ask. But yeah, they can have the whole thing there for you, and that's great. But you can also do that in other ones too. So don't always go with name recognition. Do a little bit of shopping first.
Yeah, and I think ask for those testimonials, etc., as part of your process. So, do you think there are any hidden costs that we need to be aware of then, as part of this? Is there anything you mentioned? We mentioned one about the download.
Definitely getting your data out. How much is it to get that report, annually, to run an exam maintenance report? And also another hidden cost would be, let's say you do the exam maintenance, they do an operational validity report, and you find out that there's 3 items that are keyed incorrectly or that need to be revised. Your SMEs read them and they're like, oh yeah, this is really, and you need to make those changes. How much does it cost to republish the form? Right. Yeah. So there are systems out there where if you change, you can go in as the test owner into the software yourself, which is great, or you can have your psychometric consultant do it. We do that for a lot of clients. We have like an admin account in their software system, and we can go in and just edit the item just change it or replace it with a different item, one that's of equal difficulty and maps to the blueprint, all those things. But do it carefully. And then it just is live in the test, and there's no republishing fee. But a lot of times with some of the bigger platforms, if you want to change some items on the test, then you're publishing a new form, and that has its own fee associated with it. So all of those things should be transparent in price. There should be like a menu of like, what happens when I need to do this? What happens if, standard setting and I need to change my cut score? Do I have to republish and pay to republish? What does that look like? All of those things are just questions to ask before you get on board.
Yeah, and I think it's possibly that you, by going through some of the pain yourself while using some of the smaller, cheaper services and solutions, you build up a better picture as to how you want your program to run. And then you're in a better position to kind of take that model to a larger provider as you scale, because it's going to be successful. And I think one of the benefits of moving towards a larger solution is that, you're able to scale faster, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And come out of that. So, and I think, is it fair to say that with some of these kind of budget approaches, it's going to be more time intensive for yourself? Do you think?
Yeah, unless you have a consultants like us, and there's other ones like us that will help you kind of navigate what that process looks like. And we don't do a lot of candidate management. We only do it for a couple groups. We don't love it. It's not our thing. We're not that great at it. We're good at everything we do, of course, but I would say it's not our favorite thing to do. I don't think it's super efficient to have us do candidate management as a psychometric consultant. Like, that's not our strength, right? So you don't want to pay us to do that. We do it for some, because they have a very, very small staff and they need the help to do it. But, I think that it is going to be more work on your side on the front end, but you're also going to learn not necessarily all the ins and outs of psychometrics, but the logistics of administering a testing program and maintaining it. So what are those pieces that you need? What do you need to hire out? What can you do in-house? And as it scales up and your revenue grows, more of the stuff can go out of house, but you still are educated and you still know what to ask for, what to check, what to run past, whichever consultant or whichever group is helping you. And the things that will change as you grow. So just the more you learn, the better consumer you're going to be of those products. So a lot of times we see people that have grown from the beginning of a program, by the time that they get to have a large program, those certification managers or testing managers, they know so much, and they're great clients to have, because they're like, oh yeah, I think next year we're going to have to do this, this, and this. And you're like, awesome. Yeah. They know what's happening because they grew with the program. And it's hard when you get a one-stop shop that does everything for you, an account manager, and has a psychometrician and everything. You just kind of don't really understand what's happening. And you're like, I don't know. They told me to do this, but I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
And I suppose if people really are on a budget, if they're looking for 1 hour of free consulting, I suppose, then there's always the office hours of the Monday Dennis on the 5th of September.
Yes, and no follow-up. There will be no follow-up emails from
unless you want it. Unless you want the follow-up.
Unless you say, email me, because we don't do that. I know you're mortified that I don't have a marketing email list.
I'm not mortified. I just I would recommend that people have an email list. Don't rely completely on social media and things like that. But that's a whole other guide to marketing.
Well, and I'm supposed to be, I should be better on LinkedIn, but I'm not. I'm trying to be.
But you are there, and people can find you there, can't they? You don't all have to be social LinkedIn posters, regular posters like me. Okay. I think we've been through quite a little bit of a journey there. I think there's a lot of kind of questions about it. Depends on the size, the scale, the availability you have in your team. The tools and activities you want to undertake as part of the process, how secure you need your exam to be, not you want it, but how you need to be. And that's I suppose a good conversation to have with yourself, isn't it? As to, look, what are my security risks? around my my program. Just on that one quickly, in terms of accreditation, how much influence does security have in accreditation?
So speaking for, for 17024, that's the one that I know the best, the standard that I know the best. You can get a copy of the standard. I mean, you have to buy it. It's not very expensive, and it's not prescriptive. So it doesn't say, you must use this type of platform or you must use this, but you have to be able to demonstrate the security of your exam materials, demonstrate the security of your administration. It has to be witnessed by a live person. It cannot be AI, so it cannot be record and review. It must be proctored. Basically, you just have to be able to defend the security of your testing program, and you have to monitor your statistics for evidence of cheating, which is really important, which we talked about before. You're looking at passing rates, you're looking at drift, you might even look at differential item functioning if you have a big enough program. So there are definitely requirements in there, but like I said, it's not prescriptive. It's not saying you must, you must use a platform that is accredited to its own security standard, right? There's an ISO security standard. But I think if you can say, this is how we prevent cheating, and it's X, Y, and Z. Our exam materials are protected in this way. In the olden days, they used to be in those blue books that you had to tear open. Do you remember those?
Yeah.
And, and when I first started being an assessor, we had some groups that would ship their exam materials, like the paper, and they said, this is how we signed off and it's secure and it goes FedEx to FedEx. And they had to prove that they would know that the exam materials were not compromised when they arrived at the testing center or facility. So you just have to be able to prove it along the way and have considered it and be checking your statistics for it.
Yeah. Okay. It's similar with the UK off-qual. It's kind of very much not do what you want, but it's kind of undertake the measures that you see fit, but be prepared to defend yourself. So just have that evidence and that argument prepared, I suppose. Okay, that's brilliant. So we're going to move on to the bonus question now. So we're going to say thank you so if you've listened to us via your favorite podcast channel, then please do remember to subscribe and review. We'd love to hear your stories and your tales. Here's some nice stories about people using this podcast. So that's really good. And if you want to listen to the bonus question, then we will see you on the Test Community Network. Look for the podcast It Depends page, and you'll see the bonus there. So thank you very much, Amanda, and we'll speak to you again soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Bye.
Bye-bye.